Hello, it's layperson Lisa with a reflection on the solemnity of Jesus Christ our Lord, King of the universe. So today I want to talk about expectations. And expectations are premeditated resentment. And the Jewish people had this expectation of their messianic king to be one of earthly power, one that just conquers the surrounding nations. And that's not who Jesus is. Jesus is King of the universe, but a humble king, a servant king, one who comes to serve and not to be served. And so many people had this expectation that this is who the messianic king would be. So when Jesus was this humble, loving, compassionate man in their lives, and that's who he is today, they were frustrated, they were disappointed, and so many of them stopped following Jesus. And we can have expectations on ourselves as well. I know often I will expect myself to perform in a certain way, and that just leads to disappointment and frustration. Sometimes I could beat myself up because I didn't do something as I had expected. Sometimes in my spiritual life, I'll feel like I have overcome something, but then when I fall back into it, I just beat myself up. And that's not who God calls us to be. That's not where he wants us in our lives. He wants us to always depend on him, to always trust him, to always rely on him instead of relying on ourselves. And so when I do find myself relying on myself, that is, I think I just talked about this last week too, that is where expectations fail. And oftentimes we can have expectations on other people. Sometimes we expect people to be at a level in their spiritual journey that we are. And that's not always the case. And we need to meet people where they are, just as Jesus meets us where we are. Sometimes we feel like, especially people who have fallen away from the faith, like this is you need to do this, but that just kind of turns them off. We need to love them. We need to meet them where they are and to be Jesus to them. Jesus met the tax collectors where they were. Jesus met the sinners. He meets the sinners where we are. And it just made me think of a time when I was in adoration and I was sitting in the pew and I was by myself so I could do this, but I felt like Jesus was calling me to come closer. And I went and sat at the foot of the altar. And I just imagined sitting at Jesus's feet. But then I imagined Jesus getting up out of his chair and taking my face in his hands and meeting me where I am. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to not have expectations on ourselves, on other people, but to just be open to relying on Jesus, to meet people where they are, to meet ourselves where we are, to have that humility that we can't do it on our own, that we have the King of the universe in our lives to help us with growing closer to him, with growing in virtue, with growing in holiness, with growing in humility, which allows us just to depend and rely on him who is the King of the universe. So is there a specific area in your life or people in your lives where you're putting expectations on yourself or others? Well, invite Jesus into these situations. Help him to meet you. Allow him to help you meet people where they are. Allow him to help you have this greater dependency on him.